So I'm just out on this project in Newark, and relatively straightforward one, but there's a couple of things for them to consider, particularly at the rear where they are planning on constructing the new property. There's a little bit of a ground level change which I will show you. So it's much lower here than it is at the top of the site, all the way in this back corner up here. So there's going to be a little bit of a cut just along the boundary and back towards the existing lower elevation so that they can put the property roughly in here somewhere. So cut, retaining wall and building, they want to try and retain this sweet chestnut in the background. So as long as they consider future growth rates, future pressures to prune and all those sort of things, there's no reason why that tree can't be retained. There's a little beehive over here and the bees keep whizzing back and forth. I think I'm annoying them a little bit, so try and leave them to their job, but you can see this little beehive just stood on there. They keep whizzing by and come and have a little look at me. So we've picked up the apple tree in the background. We've not picked up this one in the far distance, just purely because it's not really a material consideration. It's quite a small diameter. So out the front here, we've got a collection of trees. There's a couple of trees that are of mature age, a mature sycamore. We've got a mature lime tree. Both of them previously pollarded at around 5 to 6 metres. And treehouse just sits nicely tucked in the middle. Amazing for the kids. But the plan here is that the driveway will come off the existing over an area of gravel, like a sort of informal parking area. So I've had a chat with the client. We need to consider options for putting this access road in without damaging the trees. So we've obviously got to think about a no-dig construction, a more tree-friendly approach. Whenever you put no-dig in, you've got to consider levels, because it goes on top of the existing ground level, and depending on the specification, that can be anywhere from 100 to 150 mil of new build-up. But we will now start processing the data and get this one turned around. So good morning, Tuesday, and I am back on the M6, heading to my favourite place, Dudley, to do some more inquiries. Just stopped off for a coffee. I was extremely tired this morning. I don't know why. I just kind of woke up in this tired mood and thought, right, I need to stop for a coffee, get alert. One of the best things, and I'm going to say this unashamedly, I think Greggs is great. And I know there's some people out there that are going to go, really? And there's other people that are going to go, yeah, I quite like a Greggs. But the app, when I'm on the road so much, if I'm honest, I don't want a crappy McDonald's, I don't want a Burger King, I don't want all of this sort of rubbish. I just sometimes just want a sandwich. Just a sandwich, packet of crisps, and a coffee or a drink. And the Greggs app changed the game. That thing, I get so many rewards through that because the amount I'm on the road and the amount I stop. And this is not an endorsement for Greggs. I wish it was. Greggs, if you're listening and you want to sponsor this channel with all these subscribers, no. But yeah, I would happily take a Greggs sponsorship deal. But the Greggs app has changed things. The rewards I get, free coffee now and then. Oh, it's great. When you're on the road, it's what you need. I always look out for a Greggs now. But anyway, that's enough about Greggs. Yeah, on my way to Dudley, heading around the M6, the traffic, as usual, is quite slow. Congestion's pretty bad. We're doing today and Friday this week in Dudley. And I'm also very, very sorry if this is a little bit overexposed on the image, because I've lost my ND filter. So I put these ND filters onto the lens. They're like sunglasses, effectively, for the lens. So if it's quite bright, if it's quite a sunny day, or you're next to water or something like that, and so you can keep your camera settings pretty dialed in. This week, next few days might be a little bit overexposed. I'm really sorry about that, the image quality. But we will get there. I've ordered another one, it's on its way, it should be with us on Thursday. Tomorrow I've got a big project in Nottingham, so a bit more local to home, but that is quite a complex one. I say complex, there's a lot of trees. It's not really complex in terms of the method or the approach, but there is a lot of trees to pick up. It's really dense, and we're taking an approach of using the National Tree Map. So I've downloaded the National Tree Map as a DXF and also an OS tile, because they don't have a topo for this. It's a real dense bit of woodland in a nature reserve. So what we're doing is going to overlay that into GIS so that when I'm on site I can use it as reference. But also we're going to try and get a load of drone videography and drone photography as well, so some top-down photos, so I can make a high-resolution base map, fly the route at about 50 metres above ground, and then take a load of photos and effectively do some drone mapping. That way then I've got high-resolution aerial that I can also rectify, put that on top of the National Tree Map, so I've got some sort of polygon, isolated individual crowns, and hopefully, all being well, we can then pick up the stem positions when we're on site and figure out which tree's which. Then on Thursday I'm out doing some tree risk surveys, Friday back in Dudley, Saturday I'm going to pick up a couple of tree risk surveys as well, because we've just had a couple approved in Leicester, so I need to get on those pretty quickly, and we've got a whole heap of report writing, which is always the way. I feel like a broken record. I feel like I say that quite a lot, that we've got a load of report writing, but it's just true, we have. But today, Dudley, I'll see if I can film any bits. If there's any decent inquiries, anything worth showing, I will do, but if not, I'll catch up with you later on. So it's just gone 5:30 and I am back in the office, back after a busy day in Dudley, and as you've probably guessed, there wasn't much to film, or wasn't really much I could show you, but I did smash it out the park, got over 20 inquiries done, a lot of people answered, a lot of members of the public satisfied, hopefully, touch wood, with what we've done. Talking of touch wood, the irony is not lost on me. I'm still representing the Agri brand wearing the cap, because my hair is an absolute state right now. And I think I said either earlier in this episode or in episode 7 that I wanted to try and find out who had made these caps. So what I've done is I've Google lensed this little tag here and a little tag inside the hat, and that's presented me with who actually manufactures or makes these hats and where I can get them from. So we are getting a load of these caps made up, which, obviously with our brand, which not only for me, but to hand out to clients. Right, I've just answered a load of inquiries. We've had a couple of emails coming today with jobs approved. We've had a few emails from the accountant and things we've had to sort out, so a bit of back-end admin work, just sorted them. And I'm now prepping for tomorrow's job. Now, you'll remember earlier I said that tomorrow's job we are going to try and launch the drone. So we always, when we launch the drone, have to go through a few steps. First and foremost, the weather. If the weather is no good, if the visibility is poor, if the winds are high, if it's raining, then we're going to struggle to launch the drone. We then head over to Drone Safety Map and have a look if there's any existing restrictions in the area. So is it in a no-fly zone? Is it near an airport? Is it near, a sort of paragliding, hang gliding site? Is it near a hospital, a prison? So we have to look at what the restrictions are. Now, I happen to know that we are going to be limited on what drone we can use for this job, because the gas pipeline that we're tracing actually bisects or cuts along a existing public right-of-way. Essentially, I know that we are going to be restricted on overflight of a public right-of-way because it's next to a busy nature reserve. There are likely to be members of the public, even middle of the day, walking their dogs and all those sort of things. So we are going to be restricted on the size of drone we can use. This isn't a paid service. We are not doing a drone survey. We're not doing it with a RTK enabled drone that we're going to pass to the client and say you can build a house off that. It's that accurate. That isn't this at all. This is purely for visualization and a sort of more accurate than just walking around with a GPS on our phone plotting trees out. Because the tree cover is quite dense, we're going to struggle with GPS. So the drone imagery just gives us another layer of certainty on top of the national tree map, on top of an OS tile, that we're getting reasonable accuracy. I would imagine these two distinct lines, groups of trees, are going to be picked up as a group under British Standard 5837, but I want to pick out the stem positions of each tree within that group so I get an accurate root protection area which will guide and steer the route, or may inform whether we need to use additional mitigation, temporary ground matting, where our fencing should be placed, all of those sort of things. So it's just another layer. So this is a Mini 3 Pro, we have a Mini 4 Pro, but this little drone here gets so much use. We use this for so many things. This goes in my car pretty much every day and goes to every single site, and I would say now has done easily probably 100 hours of work, and it still flies as well as it did when I first bought it. We have the Mini 4 Pro, which we kind of keep just for our videography work. This one gets chucked in and out of the bag, it gets bashed about a little bit, it, if I'm honest, gets took off from some dusty takeoff points. But anybody that says you can't get decent high-res base imagery with this is talking absolute rubbish, because you can. Now, there are some things to consider. This doesn't have any sort of pre-flight planning, automated flight planning, waypoint mode or anything like that. The Mini 4 Pro does have a waypoint mode. This one doesn't, but even waypoint mode is limited. So you have to carry out manual photogrammetry with this. And that takes a little bit of working out, but I have found that flying at a constant elevation of about 50 meters, so I usually stick at 50 meters, and a really slow speed, so on the controller you can actually select a cine mode, and in the settings you can dial in how many meters per second that cine mode is, and you can fly really slowly with the camera pointing completely down to a bomb shot, nice and slow to get loads of overlap and get lots of pictures. Now, the way to do manual photogrammetry with this is, first of all, work out your ground sampling distance, which can be done with a calculator, and I will share that in the comments below, the one that I use. From there, you can essentially just fly in a grid pattern, flying using right angles only. So rather than going down to the end of your row and turning and then turning back on yourself, you fly forward to the side, backwards to the side, forwards to the side, and you carry on like that, making sure you get loads of overlap, and essentially you can get some pretty good results just doing that. You want a nice high shutter speed to counteract any motion blur, so although you'll be moving quite slowly, you don't want any motion blur, so a nice high shutter speed as well. After that, the process is pretty straightforward. Put it into time shots, so there's an interval shooting mode. So usually I set that at 2 seconds, and 2 seconds when I'm flying at an altitude of 50 meters is more than enough to make sure we get about 70 to 80% overlap with our images, and that is it. And then bring all the images back, and we process that typically in reality capture and get some pretty decent results. And obviously the really awesome thing about this little drone is that it's under 250 grams, which means it can be pretty much flown anywhere in the UK. You can overfly people, although you should avoid it or minimise it as much as possible. And really, it causes very little disruption. It's a fantastic drone. I highly rate a sub 250 gram drone. If you're thinking about getting one, I would say go with the Mini 4 because it has better omnidirectional sensors and all of that sort of stuff. Slightly better camera, and better modes, I must add that as well. But this is a fantastic little drone for less than £1,000, and for using this on jobs to pick up aerial imagery, to get photos for reference, to inspect something closer, higher up in the crown. You want to get some pictures of a hollow or a cavity or a broken branch or something like that. If you want to do some 3D modelling, you can do with this, as long as you get plenty of photos. Again, you can do 3D Gaussians, so 3D GS. It's an incredible little drone. You can literally pull it out of your bag, set it up within 1 or 2 minutes and take off, and you're flying. And yes, you need insurance for commercial use. Yes, you should really have done your A2 CFC as a minimum, but you don't even need any of that. Anybody can fly this drone, providing they fly responsible. They've registered and set themselves up with a flyer ID and an operator ID preferably as well. Yeah, really good drone. Really handy to have in the car. I honestly believe you have to go some way to beat surveying trees in the autumn months. Temperature's mild, the leaves will start to turn. I don't think it gets much better than this. I honestly don't. So it's just gone 3 o'clock and we're already beginning to lose the light, which is the only downside to surveying in the autumn and winter months, if I'm honest, because the rest of it is just amazing. I mean, I've spent the day amongst some beautiful trees, some amazing autumn colours. I mean, look at this behind me. It's fantastic. Now, I did launch the drone, but I actually didn't really need the drone. It's quite open at the far end, and the aerial was doing an okay job. So I decided to launch the drone for a section where my aerial image, my satellite image, was quite grainy, and then I didn't fly the whole extent as I originally planned to do, but got some decent nadir imagery, and hopefully, all being well, I've got enough information that I need. I'll kind of talk you through the project, but before that, come on, I mean, look at this. Look at the colours and the leaves, and I love the way the leaves just slowly drop off the trees and just sort of cascade and float to the ground. It's been a nice bit of woodland to be in all day. But yeah, stark contrast to last week's survey where it was absolutely hammering it down and it rained and it was pretty miserable. But here we are amongst some glorious autumn foliage, and I don't think anything beats surveying trees in the autumn when it's pretty mild. It's about 12 degrees today, which is pretty mad for second week of November. And so this is where the day started, at the substation just down here on this existing area of car parking, and then the route takes the path up to the north and out through the motorcycle barriers. And then really, as we head along the track north or northeast, it's about tracing the existing well-trodden footpath that's here and picking up trees that are on the edge of the footpath or within influencing distance. But this is not going to be as difficult as it is down at the car park end, where they're going to have to weave a route through a very dense area of tree cover. Here they can kind of weave the route along the path or exploit currently areas of unmade ground which are away from the trees. It doesn't have to be a perfect straight line, it can be informed by the position of the trees. But we did have the national tree map dropped in along with an OS tile which gave us the footpath, which was quite handy because I could just basically measure off a known point the footpath and plot the trees that way, measure the distance between each tree and from the edge of the footpath. So my thoughts on the national tree map: it actually worked quite well in the absence of a topo, but there were quite a few inconsistencies, particularly where it kind of struggles to differentiate between a large crown or two crowns of two smaller trees that are growing concurrently. So it really does struggle to kind of pick out if it's two trees close together, one large tree, or a sort of average sized tree with an understory. But like I say, just for reference, in the absence of nothing else, it's pretty good. I absolutely have to show you these turkey oaks down here. Honestly, these were a bit of a highlight, stumbling across 4 really big turkey oaks, each with stems over 1100. Amazing when you see them full maturity. Just amazing. Nothing wrong with them either, like in perfect condition. If I'm honest, most of this is going to be covered in roots. So it's all about minimising impact and then mitigating impact in the way that we go about the construction methodology. So that's where the ARB method statement will come into play, and we'll have to really make sure that it's robust and that there's parts that are supervised where there's areas of conflict, where there's pinch points, and that's particularly relevant where you've got existing roots cutting across the footpath. You can clearly see these roots. But another successful day complete, another survey complete, another load of processing to pick up and do, but we don't mind that. Nice new client. All being well, that client will be a repeat client, and we'll get a few more of these projects. Who knows? They found us organically, so yeah, it's always tricky to know if they're going to come back for more, how much work they actually do. Is this a one-off project and all those things? Head back to the car and head back to HQ.
If you wouldn't pick it up on any others for anyone else, then I wouldn't pick it up either.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Well, that's the kind of approach I took this morning. I just thought I'm just going to approach it like I would any of my other risk stuff. So it's
it's a consistency, and I think we're all sort of in a similar box. There's a couple of you, so the learning curve is minimal.
Yeah, no.
Everyone else seems to be picking it up well enough.
Yeah, it's a fairly intuitive system, isn't it? As you know, it's fairly easy to use. The only thing that those drop downs, I'll have to send you a list of a few things that I'm finding I'm having to type out, whereas they could just do adding. So I'll send you a list over.
I found a few bits as well. I can add as a go. I've just added in a work task for removing basil epicormic because I needed that yesterday. I didn't have an ivy one in yesterday, and I've added that. So it's just stuff like this. I've tried to think of everything, and you never remember everything until you start using it. Other people start using it. Send anything over. I can add them in.
So it's Thursday, and this week we are starting a brand new project. We've got 26 church sites to complete across the Midlands, ranging from Nottingham, Derby, over to Tamworth, Nuneaton, and across all the way over to Lincoln and Boston. Basically, we're going around doing tree condition surveys, so we're plotting the trees on Tree Plotter using the contractor's system. We are doing general condition and health, and then picking up any works as work orders. So far, I haven't found many works to do because most of these trees have been well maintained, typical of municipal planting. But the sites are varied, tend to be quite big land holdings. On average, I'm finding at the minute 10 to 15 trees. Some sites have 2 or 3. Some sites on our list could have upwards of 30 or 40. But essentially, we are going to all of these sites, travelling around, picking up everything on Tree Plotter, recording all the information, and then we are assigning any work orders to the trees that are necessary. So yeah, really good contract. It's not for us. This is for another company. We're wearing their branding and their high vis, and we've been appointed to this project from one of our contacts. They were kind of acting as a middleman. They're also involved with some of the data collection. And yeah, so far, so good. This is my second one of the morning. Now we're on to the third, which is over the other side of Nottingham, then heading to Derby, well, Long Eaton, Derby, and doing a loop round. So as I say, to make these jobs pay, we've realistically got to be hitting 3 or 4 a day, which means it is just like super quick. We just crack on, we just get going, we just roll with the punches. I actually priced this job quite a while ago, and it's been one of those that's a slow burner, and then all of a sudden they've all kicked off, and all of the surveys need doing before the end of November, and we've got 26 I think on our list. So there's quite a few to get through. Some of them are quite spaced out, so they were priced sort of separately, because realistically you can only hit one of them in a day, and to make that pay, you know, you've got to cover your costs. So you do lose out on some, is how I would see it. They're not any real difference in terms of the number of trees or the difficulty of the methodology. You know, that stays the same and that's consistent throughout. But where you have to pay real attention is that you've got to try and make your money on these smaller kind of churches that don't have a big area of grounds to cover. They don't perhaps have a lot of trees, and that's where you've really got to try and get as many done in a day and kind of bank a bit of time, so to speak. When you think of time is money, if you get 4 or 5 smaller church land holdings in a closer area together, so they are not as spaced out, then you can potentially, you know, sort of do a day and a half's worth of work in a day. And then on some of these other churches, they are just literally 2 hours drive there. You'll be on site all of probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then a 2 hour drive back. So that's pretty much your day gone. And they don't pay a great deal more than these sort of local church sites. So it's not like all of a sudden, because you're travelling a lot further, you can whack double the money on them. You can't. They've still got to be competitive. Unfortunately, we're kind of at the lower end of the ladder, and so we perhaps don't have as much, I suppose, margin on it. You know, it's very tight. We've got to kind of price it competitively to win it, but make sure that we're still making a little bit of profit. The person in the middle who's passed the work to us has got to make a little bit of money for winning the work in the first place, and the ultimate contractor, the one that had the contract that put it out to the person that we're acting on behalf of, they have also got to make a little bit of money at the end of it. And I think in their sense, they're a contractor, so they're probably hoping that they can make their money through some of the tree work, if there is any tree work being attached to some of these trees. But at the moment, I'll be honest, I haven't really assigned any work. I think 2 trees, and I've inspected about 30 this morning, maybe a bit less, 25, have had tree works assigned to them. The rest of them don't really warrant any tree work. So yeah, it's always a bit of a crazy one, but there you go, that's how it is. That's the nature of this game. But I've got a real sense we can probably, if they're close enough together, get 5 or 6 done in a day, which when we're pricing the jobs at X amount, I won't say that what that is, but essentially we could cover 2 days of our day rate in one day. So pretty good. Anyway, I'm on the M1, I'm hopping to the next one, which is in Long Eaton, and then from there I'm going to head over to Derby and try and do a little bit of a loop, really. So yeah, I'll bring you what I can from the next one. I should have brought my Insta360 or my GoPro, which I could have used as a POV camera, and brought you along to look at some of the trees. And there is something I am going to pick up with you that you'll probably have noticed, not just today, but also the last few weeks, the last few episodes, when it comes to measuring stems, which I'm getting a bit fed up with now. So we're going to be making a little bit of a change to the equipment we use to measure stems. So over the past few weeks, you'll have seen me rather frustratingly using one of these, a diameter tape, to measure the diameter of tree stems. And in this example, we have got 5 stems where we have to thread the tape around, measure each stem individually. And on a tree like this, where there's no obstructions, there's no vegetation, there's nothing to fight around, there's no dense brambles, head height, no hedges or anything like that, it's relatively easy to put the tape around and pass it around. But on other trees, where you've got trees in hedge bottoms, you've got trees with dense undergrowth, it's quite tricky. So I'm getting rid of this tape and I'm getting a set of calipers. I actually used to use calipers for many years at another consultancy that I was at, and it was the most amazing thing ever. And I don't know why I've persisted so long with the tape, because it drives me mad playing the tape shuffle and the tape circle, walking around the backsides of trees constantly. You get a little bit dizzy as well whilst doing it. So I'm going to get a set of calipers. Also, it's an excuse to buy something new, because if I'm honest, when you're a consultant and not a climber or a contractor, You're not buying new chainsaws, new shiny carabiners, new harnesses, ropes and all that sort of stuff. You're very limited in kind of the tools we use really. We use a tape, we use a distometer so we can measure crown spreads, we use a probe. Sometimes we'll use some advanced decay detection equipment, but that's very rare, and often a phone or a tablet. So it's an excuse to buy myself something new as well. But it will increase the speed at which I can measure stems, plus it makes a really great tool for bashing down rogue weeds. So I've just finished up on the 4th site of the day, and this one's gone pretty well. There's been some, let's say, mature cherries that aren't in the best of health at the front of the site that have all been picked up individually. So I suspect they're in a poor state because of a bacterial canker, which is quite common on ornamental cherries. And like I say, it doesn't really warrant removal. It's always a shame to lose mature established trees, particularly in an urban environment. So the recommendation on those is just to monitor on a shorter re-inspection frequency. But yeah, all in all, another nice little site. Actually really nice, well maintained churches so far. Admittedly we've only been to 4, but they've all been really well maintained. The grounds team seems to do a really good job of keeping the grass in order, mowing the lawns, trimming the hedges, cleaning the leaves up. So yeah, there are certainly worse places to spend your day. I've not used Tree Plotter for a number of years, but it's nice to be back on Tree Plotter. It's a very good system which works incredibly well. You know, it's very tried and tested, let's put it that way. But it is quite expensive, which is why we don't use it. That's why I've not moved over to it yet, and instead built my own data collection app using GIS and QField, because we just pure and simply can't afford it at the moment. Anyway, right, I'm going to pack up and try and get through Nottingham at rush hour.